This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning. Happy New Year. Welcome, members, partners, and guests. Welcome to the Southeast and Caribbean Disaster Resilience Partnership January monthly partnership meeting, our first full partnership meeting of 2024. My name is Heather McCarthy, and I have the honor and pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of SCDRP. We have an exciting lineup for you today. First, there's a lot going on with SCDRP. Our SCDRP 8th annual meeting in Savannah, Georgia is just around the corner. I can't wait to tell you what the steering committee is pulling together. I am excited to introduce you to our new SCDRP Assistant Program Coordinator and our new advisory board members. But we will devote the bulk of our meeting today to our super speaker, Rashmin Gunasekera from the World Bank. And lastly, we will wrap up with partner sharing, so please get your announcements ready to share. First, meet our new SCDRP Assistant Program Coordinator, Ricardo Mercado. Let's see, Ricardo, are you here? Ricardo joins us from Toa Baja, Puerto Rico, and Ricardo received his bachelor's degree from Texas A&M University in 2019, where he was active in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives at the university and bringing the local Puerto Rican community together. So Ricardo came on board just December 15th with us, and he's helping us with annual meeting preparations. He will be joining us in Savannah, and he will be assisting us with Spanish translation of our website, strategic plan, and other documents next year. Ricardo, would you like to say a quick hello? I'm not sure I see him. Okay, when he comes on, partners, please give Ricardo a warm welcome. So, the biggest event of the year is happening in 2.5 weeks. Join us in lovely historic district of downtown Savannah, Georgia, from January 24th to 22nd to 24th for the SCDRP 8th annual meeting. Register via Eventbrite today and continue to check our website for the latest information. As a reminder, our website is scdrp.socorro.org, and there's a tab at the top for 2024 annual meeting. First, a very sincere thank you to these gold, silver, and bronze sponsors for supporting the SCDRP 8th annual meeting. It's sponsors like these that make it possible for us to continue forging innovative partnerships between professionals in emergency management, climate adaptation, environmental justice, resilience funding, and disaster preparation, response, and recovery. Regional collaboration is not easy, and a big thank you to the commitment made by these forward-thinking multi-sectoral groups that have come together this year to make convening across boundaries and sectors possible. And now I'm going to tell you a few things to get you really excited about Savannah. We are ecstatic to be able to offer a pre-meeting Tybee Island Resilience Tour, and through a very generous sponsorship from AWR Strategic Consulting, this 4-hour field trip is offered complimentary to our meeting attendees. Space is limited, however, on the 32-passenger Old Savannah trolley, so RSVP through Eventbrite today. And here's how we're kicking off the meeting. The City of Savannah's Mayor Van Johnson will be welcoming us, and we are honored and humbled to have Reverend Durley as our keynote speaker. At the age of 80, coming from Atlanta, Georgia, Reverend Durley speaks with wisdom and enthusiasm at the intersection of climate action and environmental justice. A special thanks to Savannah Riverkeeper and the Center for Sustainable Communities and National Environmental Justice Institute's Building a Weather-Ready Nation for All initiative for pulling the funds together so that we can offer Reverend Durley invitational travel and an honorarium. So get ready to be inspired and challenged as a professional, as a person. Here's a sneak peek at our current agenda. We are doing some new things this year. A special thanks to Sapelo Island National Estuarine Research Reserve for bringing in Inky Brittany, a one-of-a-kind Savannah service. Inky Brittany will be joining us all day on Tuesday to provide us with a graphic recording of the day's events. Graphic recording is a dynamic way to document meetings and engage participants by using large-scale visual imagery and text to kind of capture main points and key takeaways. Inky Brittany will be silent listening partner, and she will create visual maps to organize the themes of the meeting, distill the information into a form that is memorable, accessible, personal, and shareable later. And I believe these graphics will serve us far beyond Savannah. Next, I'd like to point out two unique double session blocks at the end of each day that are really coming together to be potentially dynamic. First, on Tuesday afternoon, sessions 3 and 4, they kind of go hand in hand. This is going to be so insightful. We are bringing together pairs of community partners, residents, and practitioners that have worked together before to talk about lessons learned, pros and cons of community engagement models that they have tried, and how we can challenge each other to do better. On Wednesday afternoon, we are extremely fortunate to have several highly experienced professionals from FEMA, the reinsurance industry, and hazard insurance organizations and commissions who are being flown in by Duke Nicholas Institute to come early to interact and share with us before the Duke Roundtable. These final two sessions of our meeting, session 7 and 8, will dig deep into funding, finance, hazard insurance, and disaster risk management. And each of these special session blocks will have a super collider break in between the sessions to really move the needle on these tough but oh so timely topics. And you won't want to miss. We're going to kick off Wednesday with two concurrent 90-minute events, a walking tour of Chatham Emergency Operations Center and a data tools and technology exhibition. We've never done this before. Attendees will be provided with kind of a brief introductory look at cutting edge data tools and technologies that are useful in resilience and climate adaptation efforts and decision making. And I look forward to seeing all of you in Savannah. A brief congratulations to our incoming new advisory board members, Lindy Betzold. Our current advisory board chair was reelected into the federal government seat. Lindy, you can turn your camera on and wave hello. Brian Byfield from the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resilience was elected into the North Carolina seat. Brian, would you like to say a quick hello?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here representing North Carolina in this group. I hope to share what we can from our experience in North Carolina and also to learn from everybody who has been in this group before. So, looking forward to the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, and welcome. And we are ecstatic to have two new professionals from the private sector join our advisory board. Jeff Morris from Moffitt and Nickel. Jeff, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you all for your vote of confidence and electing me to serve on the advisory board. I'm very excited about this opportunity, and I definitely look forward to helping inform the future of the partnership. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeff. Yes, welcome on board. And our last new member to introduce you to today is Holly Jansen Schmidt from Jacobs. Holly, would you like to say hello to the partnership?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much. I'm very honored to be on the board and really just joined this organization at the last annual conference. So excited to get over to Savannah and share my experience from the private sector with this group and really look forward to helping to bridge the gap between ambition and action. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Holly. So Brian, Jeff, and Holly, thank you all for stepping forward into these leadership roles with SCDRP. And I look forward to our next 3 years together, working to build resilience throughout our region. Thank you. And now, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you today super speaker Rashmin Gunasekera. Rashmin Gunasekera is a senior disaster risk management specialist and leads the global program for disaster risk analytics at the GFDRR. Established in 2006 and administered by the World Bank, the GFDRR, the Global Facility for Disaster Reduction and Recovery, is a global partnership that helps low and middle income countries better understand and reduce their vulnerability to natural hazards and climate change. Until July 2021, Rashmin was part of the World Bank's Global Practice for Urban Disaster Risk Management, Resilience, and Land, that's the GPURL, team in Latin America and Caribbean region, where his work mainly focused on disaster risk analytics and disaster risk financing. Rashmin has developed and led several innovative products and operations in disaster risk management and disaster risk financing in particular, and co-founded and co-leads the DRAS SWAT team. DRAS stands for Disaster Resilience Analytics and Solutions. It is a SWAT team of highly skilled and technical experts whose mission is to troubleshoot disaster risk and resilience challenges encountered by clients internal and external to the World Bank. The DRAS team also advises and collaborates with teams to develop tailored and innovative solutions to their specific disaster risk and resilience challenges. Rashmin was also the task team leader of the World Bank's Multi-Donor Trust Fund Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility project. He has over 15 years of work experience extending to the public sector, reinsurance industry, and academia. Prior to joining the World Bank in 2012, Rashmin was a divisional director of a global reinsurance intermediary and a coordinator of the Willis Research Network, the world's largest collaboration between public science and the financial sector. As a Sri Lankan and British national, Rashmin's PhD is in earthquake seismology, and he holds an honorary lectureship at University College London. Rashmin, a warm welcome to you and a big thanks for taking time to share your knowledge and experiences with our partnership today. Now I will
Thank
make
you.
Rashmin a presenter.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you so much, everyone. Um, yeah. Okay.
If you are unmuted, I'm hearing some noises. Please mute yourself.
Can you hear me, Heather? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Rashmin, I can hear you.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Heather. It's a real privilege for me to be here. The presentation I want to give for the next, say, 25 minutes or so has a couple of videos, but also really wants to highlight some of the innovations in disaster risk management with a focus on some of the Caribbean countries, and particularly we'll talk about Dominica as well. One of the key things I also want to talk about is about disaster risk financing. And this is not necessarily looking at financing of disasters, but really how do we actually develop some of the analytics and some of the policies to reduce the financial burden on the countries when it comes to disasters. So without much further ado, I would actually like to start off with this video that really succinctly presents what disaster risk financing in the Caribbean was, but also some of the work that we actually did as well.
Over the last 40 years, disasters in the Caribbean have almost tripled. At least one country in the region is hit by a strong hurricane every year, and ever-present threats exist, like flooding, earthquakes, droughts, and public health-related emergencies. Although Caribbean countries have made great progress in reducing poverty and inequality over the years, disasters like these threaten to drive vulnerable populations back into poverty. So how can these countries cope with these disasters? The answer is by mainstreaming disaster risk management into development planning through identifying risk, reducing risks, preparing for disasters, implementing financial protection mechanisms, and reconstructing in resilient ways. The World Bank's Caribbean Disaster Risk Financing Technical Assistance Program, initially implemented in Belize, Grenada, Jamaica, and St. Lucia, targeted one of these areas, financial protection. Well-designed disaster risk financing strategies are developed before a disaster strikes, integrated into core public finance systems, and combine risk retention and transfer instruments with an effective legal framework. Ministries of Finance collaborated with the World Bank to develop recommendations to improve their country's fiscal resilience to disasters. This entailed quantifying their contingent liabilities to estimate the fiscal risk of natural disasters, reviewing their existing systems for public financial management of disasters and their legal frameworks for addressing shocks, and evaluating the domestic non-life insurance market in each country to determine their capacity to build strong financial sectors for public and private risk transfer. At the end of the process, existing disaster risk financing gaps and corresponding tailored solutions were identified for each of the 4 project countries, which include creating an inventory of public assets and streamlining damage and loss data collection, approving a disaster risk financing strategy and streamlining reporting of post-disaster expenditures, establishing a contingency reserves fund, engaging external development partners in establishing contingent financing arrangements, and developing a disaster risk insurance program for key public assets in partnership with the private insurance industry. And finally, in the medium to long term, having government and the private sector work together to implement flexible social protection systems, improve the availability and affordability of private and residential catastrophe insurance, and enhance the availability of agricultural insurance. The effectiveness of each country's disaster risk financing strategy will be based on the strength of each recommendation and how well they inform the other components. The World Bank will continue to collaborate with countries to help them improve their financial protection mechanisms and take permanent steps to develop disaster risk management strategies that protect lives, secure livelihoods, and enhance fiscal resilience.
So what we basically did, and this the risk financing strategies for Belize, Jamaica, Grenada, and St. Lucia actually occurred before Hurricane Maria struck back in 2017. And you might be surprised to know, before 2017, the uptake of the development of disaster risk financing strategies was not necessarily a priority for many Caribbean countries. However, when the devastation that occurred not only with Maria but also with Hurricane Irma as well back in 2017 really galvanized the Caribbean community, but also highlighted how things need to actually change. And what it really meant was, soon after disaster, there are many questions that governments actually need to answer. This includes how to assess the impact of urbanization or climate change. Where are the damages likely after disaster? What is the impact on the development gain, and what kind of policies need to change to protect against some of the future disasters as well? And you might have taken from the video, a lot of what we did was strengthening the underlying analytics. And that's kind of bounded by, for something like the Dominica, say, hurricane, earthquake, and risk profile that I'm actually showing over here, that not only quantifies, say, the annual average loss, or how much you need to kind of set aside from the side of the government, but also looks into talking about what the potential future risk as well. For example, it might say that on average for hurricanes and for earthquakes, you're really looking about 4% of your GDP to be set aside to deal with disasters. But when these disasters do occur, like in the case of Dominica, it can be well over 200% of their GDP. So this type of analytics was actually very useful, not only for informing ministries of finance, but also looking into other infrastructure sectors, to looking into developing of adaptive social protection mechanisms, to look at building regulatory requirements and the codes themselves, and some of the cost-benefit analysis for risk reduction measures as well. So what I'm really going to talk about in this particular presentation is how we brought those analytics together and the impact it actually had afterwards as well. That links together disaster risk reduction on one side and disaster risk financing on the other side. So disaster risk, in a sense, is really made out of three components of hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. But for a long time, what we have focused is on structural vulnerability. It's more about the vulnerability related to the buildings that actually are there. For example, this is the global earthquake model profile for Dominica, and this information is openly available. And it talks about kind of the exposed assets, the kind of peak ground acceleration, for example, but also, as I said, the spatial distribution of the annual average losses as well. And here on the left side, there are also the different building classes, right? Which ones are most at risk, and kind of the exposure value and the loss exceedance curves as well. And these losses by different parishes for Dominica. This has a wealth of information, but a key challenge is communicating all of these to the different stakeholders. So one of the key things that we did, and I'm really glad that Patrick's actually there, because in partnership with IBTS and some of the other colleagues, what we did was develop some of the analytics on the ground information coming, for example, from bill change, etc., to look at some of the cost-benefit analysis for the different types of risk reduction interventions. And for example, this shows that 44% of houses are in typology 1, which are 1 to 2-story CMU buildings with metal sheet roofs and gable shape. And similarly, type 2 is the same thing with hip-shaped roofs, whereas type 3 is about monopitch, etc. as well. And we were able to calculate what the absolute average cost of these retrofits actually might be from a basic type of retrofit, which was really about strengthening the envelope of the structure, an intermediate one, which actually looked at the strengthening of the structure as well as the roofing, etc., and looking to say about the tie downs and which options are best, but then an advanced one where you will do a full retrofit of a structure. And one of the key things that came out of it was to see how much that difference was. Notice for all of them, the cost, of course, is very high for advanced relative to some of the intermediate and the basic one, but the benefit cost ratio could actually be much higher. But remember, I was talking about this typology 2 for the hip roofs, and you could actually quantify that it is nearly 4 times as beneficial to in terms relating to the cost on if you do this type of retrofit packaging. This was very useful to have an engagement with the government on where to do that, where the retrofit should actually be, and what kind of policy formulations need to be looked into. But as I said, it actually talks about the structure itself It doesn't say anything about the people living in there. So in this case, you have two different structures. So you have the asset damage for a very big structure, but their welfare loss, because they're quite affluent, is perhaps much less. Whereas on the right side, you could see asset damage is perhaps less, but their welfare loss, because they are in low-income housing, is actually much higher. So that means their socioeconomic resilience is much higher in this kind of more well-to-do family as opposed to this low-income family, of course. But this is really helpful when you have limited budget and where you could then target where some of the policies, but also where the reconstruction, for example, needs to be. And this welfare impact then really becomes a factor of the recovery speed, the reconstruction cost, the consumption, so the socioeconomic vulnerability side of it, but also that structural vulnerability side. So hopefully you can see how we are building from the basic analytics, going into some of the risk assessment side, to going into some of the cost benefit side, and now including more the social vulnerability angles as well. But why hasn't this already happened? One of the biggest problems that we have seen is that the financing community, in terms of insurance, in terms of the lending, mortgage companies, etc., as well as the construction companies, both want resilient construction. They want better buildings. However, they rarely talk to each other. This also has been reflected in some of the limited existing coverage of some of the financial products in the Caribbean, lack of the baseline data that I just talked about, or lack of understanding of this data itself, but also in terms of kind of validating and no clear process for actually validating some of these risk reduction processes as well. And on the construction side, there's also kind of less understanding of building standards and land use. This is actually changing, but there is also chaotic implementation, for example. You might be not surprised to know in some cases, but in Dominica, there are still houses that were damaged back in 2017 that still have not been rebuilt. You know, that process after 6 years now or 7 years is still going on. So one of the solutions that we've been coming up is something called the Climate Adaptation Financing Facility. This has been piloted in St. Lucia, and now we are scaling it up into other countries, including Dominica. It really engaged with home and business owners in building climate resilience by reducing the financial burden on the government as well, by targeting specific households themselves, where the St. Lucia Development Bank would on-lend to individual households or businesses to support roof strengthening measures or other climate adaptation investments. And we then help them to say, okay, these are the types of priorities you could actually do. As I said, like in the cost benefit analysis, that could then tie in to the financing element of it as well. And this is really useful for, say, the mortgage companies who don't have the underlying analytics on the understanding of that underlying analytics to go with that. So that's where this cost benefit analysis on the housing side, the cost side of strengthening measures such as hurricane straps are costed out, the benefits are actually calculated, and this really transforms not just the financing side, but how you could actually have targeted products for different types of houses. So one of the key things that then we did was really bring it together in a training of the trainer program that was actually led by Patrick. And I'm just going to show the impact of what we have been just discussing and what we did in this short video.
The Dominica Training of Trainers program was definitely necessary because we are currently in the process of making the OECS Building Code 2015 the physical planning regulations for buildings. So we want to ensure that people who are practitioners in the built environment, practitioners in the building sector, they understand the implications of the building code as it relates to their work. How important it is to a resilience journey is something that we want them to be able to communicate. And so we want them to be reviewing plans and applications for the construction of buildings with an understanding of what the building code entails and what it requires according to the new legislation. So the Train of the Trainer program went through the building code in great detail. So it started off with the various sections of the building code. It also went into the various requirements as it relates to the structural and architectural aspects of the building. So it was very critical to give them a sort of elementary knowledge of what the engineering principles that apply to seismic design of buildings, wind-related design of buildings, and also to look at other aspects of the building code. It was also important for them to learn how to communicate their work and the requirements of the code to the people who are not experts in the built environment, people who do not have an understanding of building design. It was really, for me, informative and critical to see that the practitioners are being taught how to use the building code, seeing people understand those principles and seeing it being broken down into very digestible parts for people who are not engineers. For me, that was one of the most important takeaways from the program. In terms of how the Train of the Trainer program factors into the bigger picture, how important it is for Dominicans. Look at our journey from the actual experience of Hurricane Maria. After Maria, our government has decided that we are on this path to become the world's first climate resilient nation. One of the targets that we are looking to ensure that we have delivered by 2030 is that about over 90% of our housing stock is climate resilience. So when we have these types of training programs, what we are doing is we are using the professionals who are at the helm of ensuring that resilient building practices take root in Dominica, and we are exposing them to what the building code requires for resilience. So we are trying to ensure that we do not have a repeat of the events that surrounded Hurricane Maria. And we know that climate change is real, and with climate change comes a certain exposure to these types of events. And we're seeing that the frequency, the severity is increasing, so we want to reduce overall our vulnerability, especially in the housing sector. And so these types of programs are critical to that vision.
Cool. I hope that kind of really encapsulates how the analytics I talked at the very beginning got translated into the training trainer program, but also the impact it's actually having on the ground as well, and how we are now developing some of these tangible solutions from risk reduction to risk financing to make Dominica more resilient as well. So really moving forward, we all have a role to play in disaster risk management, in quantifying fiscal risk, in identifying some of the options in terms of policy changes that need to occur to reduce the fiscal vulnerability from government perspective as well, because especially in the low income housing side, it is a responsibility or an implicit responsibility on the side of the government as well. But we can all come together and build capacity in the Caribbean and share in some of the knowledges as well. And in my role now at more of a global level, I see the same challenges in the Caribbean that are manifested in the Pacific as well. I think I have a couple of minutes. I just want to quickly run through one other aspect of it, which is how do we respond to disasters? One of the key things is that we can use the same technology and some of the information to rapidly assess damage after disaster as well. And you can do this by something what we call GRADE, which is the Global Rapid Post-Disaster Damage Assessment Methodology. It's openly available. It really combines catastrophe risk modeling, reported damage statistics, and historical data. And traditionally, where it has taken about 2 to 6 months to go onto the field and collect data and do an assessment, such as a damage and loss assessment or post-disaster needs assessment, we can use disruptive technology using satellite imagery, using social media, census data, engineering data, and the risk profiles and the other analytics that we just talked about to do this same process in about 1 to 3 weeks. In the case of, I just talk about some of this historical damage data for Haiti. When we had the earthquake in 2021, we used all of this information, such as the census data, the engineering data, the historical damage data, the vulnerability structural as well as social vulnerability data, to assess the damage as 1.1 billion, only 13 days after the earthquake. And it was accurate to over 90% of the field-based PDNA estimate, which took about 114 days to complete. What this really means is that now we can support disaster response, recovery plans, financing, and donor coordination at a much faster pace. I hope this actually has shown how we could revolutionize uh, resilience through investments, through innovation, and of course through analytics. And the key part is that we can actually develop strong partnerships, build sustainability for a future resilient Caribbean. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rashmin. Let's devote the next 5 or 10 minutes to question and answer time with Rashmin. You can type your question in the answer box, or you can raise a physical if you have your camera on, or a virtual hand. Who has a question for Rashmin? Nellie, I see your hand is up. Would you like to turn on your camera and say hello?
So I'm not somewhere where I can turn my camera on, but
Okay.
I can turn my voice on.
Okay.
Greetings, hello everyone. Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm originally from the Caribbean, so I was pleased to see that presentation. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I live in South Florida. And so, just in a nutshell, the work that I and my organization do is on the intersection of the ways in which we can uh, reframe the way we think about resilience. That includes, well, something you mentioned, the people and especially the psychological trauma that we're all experiencing, whether it's the anxiety leading up to disaster events or the trauma that we experience through loss. So my question is, have you seen any examples of how this is integrated into either the strategy or financing? Is there any thinking that's happening to integrate this as part of the strategy? Because it's not just about the physical loss; it's about the ways in which people continue to be resilient and facing the things that we can control, no matter how much we're able to adapt.
Sure. Thanks so much. Great question. Yes, there are different ways of looking into of course, the trauma side as well. And those are through community-led programs as well. So, for example, you might recall after the earthquake in 2021 in Haiti, Haiti is a fragile country, right? So even getting aid to Las Cayas, for example, was very difficult because you had to go through areas which are controlled by gangs. So you need to actually have the coordination side with the government, but also from a security perspective. So for a lot of time, there was this people were mobilized in, in in the capital, but they couldn't actually get it to where it actually needed to be. So there are other factors that actually are there. There are a lot of NGOs who are actually looking into educational and outreach programs as well in terms of facilitating that. But for example, we've been also looking at, say, the gender element, because we know that disasters disproportionately affect women, particularly in low-income housing, etc. But if you look at what's being reported between damage, losses, and the needs for women are tiny. So how can you actually reconcile that, right? So that brings out different questions where the needs and the damages are actually huge, but for when it comes to women, it's actually disproportionately lower than what's actually being expected. So yes, there are a lot of different aspects that need to be covered. We try to do that through adaptive social protection programs as well. So there are social registries and other mechanisms that would are better prepared and agile to respond to the specific needs of the vulnerable communities. Hopefully that answers the question. But yes, it's a lot more that could be done. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rashmin. Next question. Rashmin, there has been a request in the chat for links to the videos that you showed during your presentation. So I will get with you and let's put those video links into our next SCDRP newsletter, and then you can share those with your colleagues as well. Other questions? Oh, thank you, Rashmin. Rashmin just dropped them into the chat. Other questions? Tremendous presentation, and I think this is the start of connection and collaboration with you and your colleagues at the World Bank and throughout the Caribbean. Thank you so much, Rashmin, for taking time to share your thoughts and perspectives on innovations in disaster risk management. Um, Extraordinary. Thank you again.
No problem, Heather. And if that, I'm not sure whether I answered all the questions in the chat, but otherwise more than happy to do so. Yes, I'm more than happy to share my email address as well. Put that in chat. But there's so much we can actually do together, and I think this partnership is actually very, very exciting because there are a lot of innovations that actually have come from the Caribbean, such as the CRIF, which is the first globally parametric insurance program at a regional level. And there are a lot of lessons that actually are applicable beyond the Caribbean as well. So I think I really hope that we could collaborate and share some of those experiences together. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rashmin. And from my perspective here at SCDRP, we share vulnerabilities with the Caribbean and we can also share solutions. There are some extremely innovative insurance solutions that are coming out of the Caribbean, and much to be learned and much to be shared. So again, this is just tip of an iceberg, and I'm so glad to make this connection with you, and I hope we can collaborate on future initiatives and projects. Thank you again, Rashmin. And now I have a few more announcements. Share my screen. So the next time we get together will be for our in-person full partnership meeting during our SCDRP 8th annual meeting in Savannah. And then during our virtual February monthly partnership meeting, we will be hearing from Andy Fox at North Carolina State University. Professor Fox specializes in the development and management of high-performing public landscapes with an expertise in natural infrastructure, resiliency planning, community design, and land-water conservation assessment. And now it's time to hear from you, partner sharing time. Let's use these final 5 to 8 minutes or so. Please turn your camera on, turn your microphone on, and remember, relationship building starts here. What do you have to share? Announcements from the region. I see some coming in to the chat. We have from George Bonner, an opportunity to serve as a regional partner for a program focused on energy resilience. Thank you,
Yeah, so
George.
that's an NREL program, National Renewable Energy Lab program, and we've been a regional partner for the Southeast for the last 3 years. They've actually opened it up to add more regional partners. They're probably going to have a regional partner for the Caribbean, one for the Gulf, one for Florida, Georgia, one for the Mid-Atlantic. It's closing, I think, on the 10th of January, but if you have any questions about it, I'd be glad to talk to you about it. So it's a pretty cool opportunity to basically provide technical support for those communities to help them build energy resilience.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, George. Carrie, Furriness has also posted an announcement in the chat. Would you like to speak, Carrie?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, and I put in the link that hopefully will allow folks to pull that up. We're partnering, the Southeast Climate Adaptation Science Center is partnering with several other folks, including the chapter authors of the Southeast chapter of the National Climate Assessment that was just released a month or so ago. So this seminar series is going to be conversations with practitioners, with some of the which is some initial information from the chapter authors, but really talking about how some of those key messages are being interpreted and used by folks in the field. So hope you'll join those conversations.
Fantastic. Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, and folks, if you have not gotten an opportunity to dig into this fifth National Climate Assessment, take a few minutes to do that. It's an extraordinary document, and I'm really appreciative of Carrie's group coming forward to kind of distill down some of the main features, because it's dense. There is so much in there, so much valuable information. Thank you, Sherry. Kamiko. We have a question. How many island nations are in SCDRP and will be going to the conference? Great question. We have last year in Miami, we had a special effort to engage with international Caribbean professionals, and we have about we have members representing Belize, Barbados, U.S. Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, Puerto Rico, the Bahamas. Those come to mind. There are probably a few others, and in fact, if you're here and you would like to speak up, please do. And we have some of those same folks coming to Savannah, Georgia again. I know Barbados and Belize will be represented, and Puerto Rico and U.S. Virgin Islands for sure. And keep in mind, registrations are still coming in for our meeting in Savannah, so I'm sure additional attendees will be added. Lindy, I see a few announcements from you. Would you like to speak for a moment?
Sure. I just wanted to highlight that the Social Coast Forum is coming up. Essentially, the Social Coast Forum really brings together a network of practitioners that to share social science tools and resources and discuss ways to integrate the social sciences into coastal decision making. So it talks about engagement strategies and economics and evaluation and a lot of those social science tools that can help us become more effective coastal management folks or coastal resilience professionals. So just wanted to highlight that and provide the event. It does sell out every time we are able to offer it. So if you're interested, don't delay. It's a great conference and very focused on helping to incorporate those social science benefits to aid in management.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Lindy. And Tasha Allen, I see you've got a couple announcements posted in the chat. Would you like to speak?
Hey, Heather, can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Tasha.
Hey, everybody. Happy New Year. Just wanted to let folks know that the end of this month, we have our 7 best practices for risk communication. It's a 90-minute virtual training where we go through basically what it says there, 7 best practices for improving your risk communication skills. We have case studies that are presented as well. So it's a good way to, a good entrance into risk communication. And then that really long link there, that's the registration link.
Fantastic. Okay, thanks, Tasha. Any additional announcements, go ahead and email them to us at scdrp@socorro.org, and we will download the chat box after the meeting, and we will share all of your resources and announcements in the next newsletter. Oh, and Nellie, she has put forth a film trailer called Healing People, Heal the Planet. I got to watch that yesterday. Please take a moment and watch that trailer at your convenience. And we're going to figure out how to feature the full film at some point. So thanks, Nellie. So this concludes our January monthly partnership meeting. A very special thank you to our super speaker, Rashmin Gunasekera from the World Bank, and thank you for joining us today. I will officially end the meeting. However, Rashmin and I can stay on for a little bit if you have some specific questions for him. I look forward to seeing you all in Savannah, and have a great day.